as you might have guessed, this is where we age our cheese, or one of the rooms we age our cheese. We have just finished installing some new equipment that we started back in September, October of last year. Part of the reason is some of our equipment we originally started with was all used equipment that we got from Europe, and though it worked well, it was starting to show its age a bit. Some of it was probably 50, 60 years old. And so we make a lot of different cheeses. They age for different lengths of time. Our oldest aged cheese is probably our Pacific Parmesan and our aged farmhouse. And they're usually aging, let's say, 15 to 24 months. A lot of times it depends how the cheese ages. Sometimes they're a little quicker, sometimes they're a little slower. Things do vary a bit because the milk itself varies through the seasons, what the cows are eating. So especially with the aging process, it changes how the cheese ages, how long, and you'll get some variations in flavor. And you may notice, why are these cheeses kind of this yellowy brown color? And that's because we smoke them. So this cheese here is our Pacific Wildfire. It's got habaneros and black pepper, and it's the same cheese here. This is the unsmoked version, this is the smoked version. And same with this cheese. Now this one just got smoked yesterday, and these ones were smoked a week, and you can see it's changed color. That's just part of the aging process, the color changes. But the other thing, you can see a difference in the shape of the cheese wheel. This one has more of a traditional Gouda, sort of the rounded corners and that, because that was made with our old molds. And these ones were made with the new molds and sort of sharper corners, and it's a little bit different. So we got that equipment, those vats from Switzerland. We'll see that in the next room. And this is a batch we'll probably smoke on Friday. But we just use local hardwoods. So as we try to partner with other local businesses, like there's a greenhouse grower here in the valley that grows the habaneros for us. So it's a way for her to have a good wholesale customer, and we kind of have a bit of a guarantee that, you know, she'll plant however many 100 habanero plants, and she knows she's got a guaranteed customer for it. So it's part of, just as a small community, we find small ways that we can work together. Most of our cheeses, we probably age 3 to 4 months, and they're ready. And we make a wide variety. But also we have different ways of aging cheese. So this is the usual one, just climate controlled, and just let time do its thing. But we also have a small aging room where we do a wash rind style of cheese. And that's where, instead of being wrapped in plastic like this to prevent it from drying out, the wash rind cheeses are in a humidity controlled room, and every so often the cheesemakers will go and they'll just wipe the outside of the wheel with, it could be as simple as salt water, it could be a very complex blend of herbs and spices and wines and beer or whatever, you know, you can come up with whatever concoction you think makes a good cheese and try it. We use Chardonnay from 40 Knot Vineyard here in Comox. And so our washed rind cheese has a little bit of a hint of wine in the flavor, but it has a very different complex flavor. We might start with this cheese here is our Boerenkaas. So we might start with this cheese and we wash it. You would not recognize it as being the same cheese as this one being aged in a room like this. So aging has as much to do with flavors and textures as the actual making of the cheese. So let's scoot on down, just go through that door right through there, and we'll just keep on going right on through. One of them is buffalo yogurt with the buffalo milk. So McClintock's is the name of the farm that we get our buffalo milk from here in Courtenay. And they wanted to do yogurt, and they were prepared to put the time in to do the marketing and the market development. So we make the yogurt for them. And as a bit of a further collaboration, Tree Island Yogurt does the distribution for them, and it's their yogurt. So it's like 3 different businesses are involved in that one product. So it's just ways of utilizing our resources and working together. Personally, I think buffalo milk has probably made the best yogurt that I've ever had, and I'm not biased at all. But it just has that natural thickness of say a Greek or a Balkan style yogurt. It doesn't have to be strained. It doesn't have to have added powdered milk or anything like that. And and it's a very good sideline for us. It allowed us enough volume that we could buy a piece of equipment like this, which is a automatic cup filling machine. So we make, for cheeses, we make fresh mozzarellas that would go in a tub, and we make feta that goes in a tub. But if it was just based on that products alone, we probably wouldn't have been able to afford it, because these kinds of machines are fairly expensive. I don't know what they would go now, but they're probably $150,000 to $250,000. Anything you see made with stainless steel, just go ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It's expensive. But having that extra volume with the yogurt, say, okay, we can justify it. And it's a growing market. Like every year they increase their sales, which is really encouraging. And so these pieces of equipment down here are, oh, yes?
Could you make quark?
Could we make quark? Yeah, our cheesemaker knows how to do it. But the problem for us with these things is, how big of a market is there? And I get occasionally people asking about quark because they want it, but they don't have enough of their friends to say, okay, can you buy 10 kilos a week every week? And it's usually no, they want quark for something and then they don't want it. So
What is it?
what is quark? It's a cheese. It's and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somewhat similar to a cream cheese, but it is different. I think consistency and that is a little different, but that's about the closest thing that we make, rather than the other soft cheese we make is ricotta, but I think ricotta is too different than quark. Am I in the ballpark there?
Yeah, it's just a different bacteria than yogurt.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you can make zero fat quark.
Right.
It's kind of healthy.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, yeah. Like the thing is like it all depends on, you know, it's like for a local market, we probably don't have enough people that would buy it. But if we were in the Fraser Valley or close to Victoria, it might be a different ball game because there's enough people there that if they knew that like you go Wednesday and you get fresh quark because it's made every Wednesday. Like that's what we do with our fresh curds. We make them every Wednesday. And we have, with the CFB Comox here, there's a lot of people from Quebec and Ontario, and they think that when they come here that they're not going to be able to get fresh curds. And they're just absolutely amazed. It's like, oh, there's a cheese factory here in Courtenay, and they make fresh curds, and they're in here, and they go, well, it won't be as good as Quebec. And then they try it, and they go, yeah, okay, it's almost as good as Quebec. But it's just like there's just a parade of people here every Wednesday for fresh curds. And if we had a market like that for quark, then we would be able to say, yeah, we could make it work. But
Quality Food had, I think they had quark.
right,
at the time,
yeah,
but I don't know.
yeah, it's probably every store is going to be a little bit different because if they have a clientele and they know that okay, they can, you know, let's say you buy a case of 8 and they know that they can sell 8 every week. Yeah, you can convince them to get it in. But if they have to throw it out or discount it, it really deters them in a hurry. Come on this way. So this is the heart of our firm cheese and our fresh mozzarella. So this is the vat. And if you want to have a look inside, there's a small platform on you can just go up those steps and you can look in the platform there. And this style of cheese vat they call a double O because it kind of has a kind of a weird shape. And what it is these paddles that stir, they interlock, so they don't hit one another, but they stir and stir. And so the basic cheese making process is we pasteurize the milk, and we'll see the pasteurizer in the next room. The milk goes in here approximately 40 Celsius, so it's around the body temperature. We'll add a bacterial cultures to it. And the cultures, the number one food they have is the lactose, that's a sugar. And they grow very rapidly at that temperature. And the cheese makers will monitor the pH. And when it gets to a certain level, they'll add an enzyme. Now, it could be traditional calf rennet, it could be a microbial enzyme, it could be a thistle extract, a plant extract. There's a lot of different enzymes that can be used. And they'll each have a different flavor and texture. But they all have one thing in common. What they're trying to do is they want the proteins to lock together. Because if they don't do that, the only thing you're going to get is thick yogurt. You're not going to get cheese. So that enzyme is the thing that makes cheese. And once it's gone through that process, and the cheesemakers have a way of checking the milk will just sit there, and what they do is they'll stick a finger into the curd, and they'll just gently lift it up, and they watch how it breaks apart. And when the break is a certain cleanness of how it breaks, then they know that that process is complete. And you'll see on the wall over here, these paddles, and they have little knives on them. And we put those on the arms there, and it starts to go. And that's what we call cutting the curd. And so the reason is we want to separate curds and whey. And it's a process. You get a tub of yogurt, you take a spoonful out, put it back in the fridge, and come back an hour later, and there's whey, because it's separated, and it separates at that break. So what we want to do is we want to make the pieces of curd very small, so we get more whey out of it. And the more whey we get out of it, the harder the cheese, or firmer the cheese. If we want it hard, we get rid of the fat, because the fat will soften it. So like a cheese like a Parmesan is actually made with skim milk, because if there's too much fat, you just no matter how dry it gets, it's still going to have a bit of softness to it. So the curd and whey, they stir around, and the cheesemakers they may have to heat up the vat. There's all kinds of things that they can do to influence the texture, the flavor of the cheese it's going to be. So there's the type of cultures you use, the type of enzyme that you use, how you treat it with the cutting process, whether you heat it up. So all these things are options of what the cheesemakers can do. And then we have a system, this block back here, this machine, and unfortunately it's down. But the molds are inside here, and it pumps the curd and whey as a solution through this blue tube, which hooks up to here, and it fills the molds inside, and it's got air pistons that can compress, so the pressing where we kind of squeeze the curd together so it further knits the proteins together, gets rid of more whey, and it makes it into those blocks like what you saw in the other room. Once it's gone through that process, we have a brine tanks over there, and we usually put them in the brine for about 40 hours. Because cheese without salt is not very appetizing. Yes?
Where does the bacterial culture come from?
Our bacterial cultures we purchase from companies. I think they're all based in Europe. And so they'll have certain strains of bacteria, so lactobacillus, and to be honest with you, I don't remember the names of them. There's literally hundreds. But there's also a family of bacteria, and there's different strains. And sometimes a certain strain will work here and won't work at somebody else's cheese plant, or vice versa. And cheese making, I call it bacterial warfare, because what we're trying to do is influence what happens on the microbial level to make what we want. So we're adding cultures that even though the milk is pasteurized, that doesn't mean that there aren't other bacteria there, just the ones that are there are not pathogens. So by heating the milk to a certain temperature for a certain length of time, it'll guarantee to kill pathogens. There's other bacteria in there, and they may influence the cheese. So by putting in cultures, there's the existing bacteria, there's ones we add, and there's some that live better in different environments. So there's some that may kind of exist in the heat of a vat, but when you get into the aging room, they do better at 10 degrees Celsius than they compete better at that temperature than they do at this temperature. So the cheesemaker knows all of these kinds of things, and over time he may just go, well, I've used this strain of this type of bacteria and it's not working like it used to. So he might change because things are going on in the unseen world. Okay, all right, we'll go on to the next room. We'll see where the pasteurizer is. Just watch this door swing shut, so just hold it open. So this is another one of our new pieces of equipment, and it's just a maze of pipes, but they do have a purpose. So this particular is called HTST, and it means it's an acronym for high temperature, short time. Because with pasteurization, it's a combination of heat and time. So if you pasteurize in a vat, you can do it at a lower temperature, but for a longer time. But because everything flows, we can do a higher temperature for a shorter time. So in a nutshell, what happens is we get the raw milk from a silo outside. It goes through this block of heat exchangers on the side here. And it goes through the first block. You got cold raw milk going this way. Coming the other way is the pasteurized milk. And what we're doing is we're transferring the heat from the pasteurized milk to the unpasteurized milk through the heat exchanger. And the idea is that when the pasteurized milk comes out of here, and it's going into the cheese vat at about that 40-degree temperature. So we're ready to make cheese with it. The pre-warmed milk, still raw, and it's maybe gone from 4 to maybe 35. It goes into the second chamber, and it's passing by hot water. And the hot water will heat it up to the correct temperature. So let's say 73 degrees. Then it has to stay at that temperature for 16 seconds. So you see this zigzagging pipe at the back there. So it's just a big set of loops. When the milk finishes flowing through that, it's done at 16 seconds, and now it's going through the first chamber again, but it's on the other side. So it's just a complete loop. And we're reusing quite a large percentage of the heat energy. And that's really the advantage. Speed is one thing, but it's recycling the heat is another. And we don't have to use energy for cooling. For yogurt, we scald the milk at about 90 Celsius, and it has to stay there longer. So you'll see these. When we go into the next room, you'll see a similar kind of thing. Only it's massive. It's 3-inch pipes, and it's way more because we have to hold the milk for a longer period of time. We've also got behind you here is a separator. It's an automatic separator, so we can separate the milk as it's going through the system. And that's really important because the milk may be 4.5% fat, but we don't need 4.5% fat to make most of our cheese. We might need it at 3.8%. So we can skim that milk, that cream off, and we can use it. We do make a small amount of butter. And that way we get a better quality cheese because we could better use the fat. Because at some point in time, more fat, it just goes out with the whey. So by separating it out, we utilize it. And there's quite a demand for butter. We actually don't make enough to supply what people want. Because we make a cultured butter, which is not a common thing, and it's unsalted. So we have a few restaurants, and a few bakeries, and more people would like it, but we just don't have access to the amount of fat.
Do you sell it in the store?
We have some. I think we have some available in our store.
Except the other group didn't buy it all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But it's like you know, if you're living in Nanaimo or Duncan or wherever, you may never see that because it doesn't, we just don't have enough to go beyond the local area.
Didn't even know you made butter. Now here we are. So.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it a secret.
Okay.
Don't tell anybody.
We'll put that on Facebook.
Yeah.
There's no butter here.
Okay, we'll go into the next room here. So this is the yogurt loop.
Oh, wow.
So it has, I think it's 5-minute hold time. So you may notice that this vat looks really different than the one you saw in the other room. And that's because this is where we make our soft cheese. And soft cheese is a much more delicate curd. And what we do is, in that room, we were trying to get as much whey as we could separate out of the curd, you know, the stirring and all of that. Here, we want it to, we do need it to separate, but we want to do it much, much slower. And so each of these vats is the same size. It's in the up position for cleaning, but it's on an air cylinder, so it folds down, and we fill each vat with the same amount of milk. So if we're making brie, say we were going to make brie today, each vat will have 310 liters in it, exactly 310. And we have a little measuring stick to make sure. Each vat will have exactly the same amount of cultures added, the same exact amount of rennet. When we go to cut it, we use hand knives rather than the machine. So this fits the shape of the vat, and it goes in, and it makes the vertical cut. Got another one here that does the horizontal cut. And another one here that does the third cut to make cubes about that big. And it's gently stirred up. Those plastic blocks you see on the back there, you can see the top, they're little round circles. Those are the molds for brie and camembert. So we'll put eight of those on this table. And we put these funnels on top, and then these hook up to the vats. And when it's ready, the vat tips up with an air cylinder. It dumps all the curd and whey together out onto the table. And all the cheesemakers have to do is just even it out, distribution of the curd. And you see how high those block forms are. They're about 4 inches high. They'll be filled right to the very top. And then over a course of about 6 to 8 hours, the whey will slowly drain out of it, and then the level of the curd slowly drops until it makes sort of that puck-sized brie and camembert. So very, very different way of handling it versus the firm cheeses. This is a machine actually we bought quite a long time ago for wrapping our brie and camembert. And all of these kinds of equipment are handmade, they're very specialized. The company in France that made this is probably not much bigger than we are, but they're one of the few people in the world that make these kinds of things. And how it basically works is this blue belt goes on this arm here, and the cheese goes in, and there's a white disc, and it lands on that, and it's on an air piston, and it pushes the cheese up. You see those kind of finger things there. They go in, grab the paper, pull it out. There's a knife there, cuts the paper, and then the cheese goes through, and it pushes the cheese up that white plastic channel, and it comes up to the top, and these metal paddles move like that, and they flip the flaps underneath the cheese, and it's packaged. And then it moves it over to here, and it spits out a label and puts it on the bottom and seals it so that it stays wrapped. And this thing will, if it's working right, it'll do about 2,500 cheeses an hour. And the key is when it's working right. Because there's a lot of sensors and there's a lot of things that can possibly go wrong with a machine like this. It's very complex. And some days the cheese isn't quite right, the whatever's not working, and we're in here wrapping by hand. So we still do it, thankfully not too often, but when it happens, nobody's happy. So when we it's a good day when the soft cheese machine's wrapping, because it's like literally, if everything works well, even a full day of production there, we might get done in 3 hours. And when it's not, it's all day long. So that's basically it. You can just keep on wandering through there, and we're back for where we started. We have done unpasteurized milk. What we found was the level of attention when you've got non-pasteurized milk in the same place as pasteurized milk is the potential of a cross-contamination goes up quite a bit. So it's better to be either one, or I think it's better to be either one or the other. So with unpasteurized milk, it has to age for a minimum of 60 days, and then it has to be tested, and then it can be released.